My name is Josh. I'm 43. I live in Denver, Colorado, where the winters bite early and the summers never apologize for the heat. I married Melissa in the fall, 3 years ago now, in a courthouse ceremony with more silence than smiles. She wore a navy dress that clung to her like the past, and I wore a suit that didn't quite fit anymore. The judge spoke softly. We both said yes like it meant survival more than celebration. She had 2 daughters from her first marriage. Haley was 18 when I met her. Morgan, 20. One in college, one still dragging her feet through senior year. Both of them tall, sharp-eyed, with that inherited stillness that says, "I've been watching people disappoint me for years." When Melissa introduced us, they didn't smile. They didn't flinch either. Just nodded, said hi, and went back to their phones. That's how it started. A quiet rejection. Polite dismissal. No screaming, no rebellion. Just the slow, heavy sense that I wasn't being invited in, not really. I wasn't their father. I didn't want to be. I didn't demand love or titles or a seat at the head of anything. I just wanted a role. Something between ghost and guardian. Something they could lean on if the world got too heavy. I thought that would be enough. But in hindsight, I see how wrong I was. In those early months, they were civil. Not kind. Not cruel. Just detached. They spoke to me when Melissa was nearby. They thanked me when prompted. And they never, ever used my name unless they were upset. They called me Josh. The way some people say whatever. It took a while for me to see it, that I wasn't being accepted, just tolerated. Like a side effect of their mother's decision. A price they hadn't agreed to pay. Still, I tried. I picked up their prescriptions. Paid for dental visits their father missed. Helped Haley replace 2 tires after she hit a curb on I-25. Drove Morgan to the airport when she didn't feel like taking the shuttle. I remembered their birthdays before their dad did. Bought them gift cards when I didn't know what else they liked. I paid their phone plans, bought their groceries when they visited, gave them space when they didn't. They let me pay, but they never let me in. I remember one winter morning. Snow on the roof, air thick with furnace heat. I asked Morgan if she wanted to join us for dinner that Friday. She looked at me like I was offering her homework. "I think I already have plans," she said, and then turned to Melissa, waiting for her to confirm it mattered. That was the pattern. Every request I made had to be seconded by their mother to be taken seriously. Every suggestion passed through her like I was an echo, not a man. It was like being a guest in a house I paid for. Every laugh I heard from the hallway was a closed door. Every shared look was a wall I wasn't meant to climb. Still, I held on. I told myself love isn't instant. Families take time. Maybe they'd never call me dad. But maybe one day, they'd call me when they needed help, and mean it. Maybe one day, they'd thank me without being reminded. Maybe they'd see me. But time passed, and nothing softened. If anything, it hardened. I tried not to measure my value in text messages or dinner invitations. I tried not to track how many times they replied to their father's calls, but let mine sit unread. I told myself I wasn't in this for approval. I was in it for stability, for consistency. Then came the evening that undid all of that. We were home, Melissa and I, after a long day. She had stepped outside to take a work call. I had just finished unloading groceries, sweating under a January coat, and Haley was scrolling on her phone, legs slung over the couch arm like she owned the place. I asked if she could help put a few things away. Just that. A simple request. She didn't look up. Then she said it. "Why should we respect you? You're just Mom's husband, not our blood." No venom. No raised voice. Just pure clarity. Like a truth she'd waited months to deliver. Like a verdict, not an insult. My first thought was that I misheard her. That maybe the words weren't meant to cut. But the way she looked at me, unflinching, expressionless, told me otherwise. There was no misunderstanding. No misstep. Just a line being drawn right in front of me. I didn't yell. Didn't ask her to explain. I didn't demand Melissa come back into the room and witness the betrayal. I just stood there and felt the floor tilt beneath me. That one sentence stripped away every polite lie I had told myself. That we were working on it. That they just needed time. that I was slowly becoming part of the family. No, none of that was true. To them, I was never more than a fixture. A man who paid. A man who stayed quiet. A man who kept things running until their real father called or didn't. I looked around the kitchen, the one I stocked, the one I cleaned, the one I paid a contractor to remodel last spring, and I saw it all differently. I saw how invisible I had become in the very life I built for them. And that's when something snapped. Quietly, not in anger, not in revenge, but in clarity. I walked out of the room, not dramatically, just out. I went to the bedroom, sat down on the edge of the bed, and stared at the carpet. The fibers I vacuumed every Saturday. The sheets I changed when Melissa was too tired. The bills I paid without ever being thanked. I sat there for a long time, and then I started making a list. Not of grievances, of exits. First, I called the dealership. My SUV still had a good trade-in value. I didn't need it anymore, not if I was leaving the city. Then I checked the mortgage. We were almost done paying it off. I made a lump sum payment, closed the last balance. Next, I canceled the family credit cards. The ones I opened for emergencies. The ones they used for sushi runs and Uber rides and impulse Amazon buys. Gone. I pulled up the lease listings for a small one-bedroom on the edge of town. Quiet, private, nothing fancy, just enough. Then I booked a flight. Not far. Just Arizona. Somewhere dry, somewhere silent, somewhere I could wake up without being asked for anything. Melissa came in an hour later. She asked what was wrong. I told her nothing, because what's the point? She wouldn't have called it betrayal. She would have called it stress. She always did. And when I told her the next day that I was leaving, that I had cleared the accounts, signed the lease, booked the flight, she stared like I'd admitted to murder. "You're just leaving?" she asked. "Just like that?" "No," I said. "Not just like that. Like this." And I showed her the receipt from the mortgage. The flight itinerary. The deactivated cards. All of it. She said I was abandoning them. Haley posted that I walked out. I said nothing, because for the first time in years, I was done justifying my presence. Done begging for respect I had already earned. I didn't leave in the night. I didn't slam a door. I walked out in daylight. Quietly, calmly. I left a note on the fridge. It said only this: "I gave what I had. You gave what you felt. This is the balance. Goodbye." And then I drove. The highway felt unfamiliar. Empty. Not just in traffic, but in weight. There was no tension in my shoulders. No texts to check. No expectations waiting at the end of the drive. Just a road. And silence. And for the first time in years, the silence felt like a gift, not a punishment. A week passed before I heard from any of them. Morgan messaged first. It wasn't rage. It wasn't confusion. It was entitlement wrapped in digital disbelief. "You seriously think you can just disappear? We're family." Family. That was rich, considering how often they reminded me I wasn't. Not their real dad. Not their blood. Just their mother's mistake, corrected only by my financial usefulness. I stared at her message for a long time. My thumb hovered over the keyboard, but I didn't type a word. What would I say? That I waited 3 years for one of them to see me? That I paid for everything, smiled through everything, only to be dismissed like a temp worker whose contract had run out? No. I closed the message. That was enough. Melissa followed 2 days later with a text that read like a performance review. "Real men don't walk away. Real men stay and work through things." Work through what? Her silence? Their contempt? The way every dollar I gave them bought me less and less dignity? I didn't respond. Not because I had nothing to say, but because I finally understood something. Respect isn't earned by giving more. It's lost when you give without boundary. When you keep giving and they keep taking, that's not love. That's erosion. And I was done being eroded. So I moved forward. I sold my SUV, took the cash and put most of it toward savings, paid off the last of my private debts, closed out the credit accounts I'd opened for the girls. They hadn't thanked me when I opened them. They sure as hell wouldn't mourn when they were gone. I called the bank. Cancelled the recurring transfer I'd set up for Morgan's last year of undergrad. It had been automatic for so long I'd nearly forgotten I was still feeding her tuition in monthly installments. I pulled out my portion from the joint savings, closed the account, and transferred everything into a solo vault under my name only. Then the utilities. Electric, gas, water, internet, all in my name, all being used without hesitation. I logged in, terminated my accounts, and left the transfer requests to fail. That's when Melissa tried to move quick. Real quick. I got an email from the electric company about a transfer request. She was trying to slide her name onto my bills like none of this had happened. Trying to keep the lights on with my silence. I denied the request. She'd have to apply herself from scratch. With her own credit. Her own income. Good luck. It took less than 2 weeks for them to realize what I'd been covering. The calls started. Morgan again. This is insane. The Wi-Fi got shut off. Mom says the gas is about to go. Are you really doing this? I didn't answer. Because yes, I was really doing this. I was removing myself from a life that had never included me. And for the first time in 3 years, I exhaled and meant it. The apartment was small, quiet, 1 bedroom, unfurnished when I arrived. I bought only what I needed. A mattress, a desk, a chair that didn't hurt my back. I made coffee in silence. I walked barefoot across floors that didn't creak with resentment. I slept through the night without waiting for a slammed door or a muffled insult. I didn't tell anyone where I went. Melissa messaged once asking if I was safe. I almost laughed. Safe? No, I wasn't safe. I was real. I was finally real to myself. Every day in that house had made me smaller. Shrunk me down to a bank account. A man who fixed faucets but couldn't be spoken to unless it was convenient. Now I sat at a table with no one across from me, and it felt like honesty. A few weeks in, I started writing again. Nothing big. Just a blog. A place to put the wreckage. I didn't name names. I didn't post screenshots or point fingers. Just entries about sacrifice. About men who build without thanks. About being useful until you say no. People called it selfish. I called it boundaries. And slowly, messages started arriving. From other men. Dozens. Then hundreds. Same stories. Same silence. Same fear of being the first one to step back. One guy wrote, "She told me I was like a ghost in my own house. Now I know why." Another, "I thought being steady was enough. But no one sees the floor until it caves in." We had different names, different cities, but the same wound. Invisible men, useful men, until we weren't. Melissa kept trying. Not to reconcile, to recover. She asked for help with closing accounts. With resuming payments just for a month. She even offered to pay me back later. As if this had all been a favor, not a decade of unreturned loyalty. I declined. There were no threats, no final ultimatums, just a steady, unshakable no. I had finally found my footing, and I wasn't about to lend it out again. One night, 3 months after I left, Morgan messaged me. No preamble, no bargaining, just this. "We took you for granted. It was easier when you paid for everything and we didn't have to deal with you. I'm sorry." I read it twice, not because it hurt, but because it was too late. Too late for reflection to matter. Too late for guilt to fix what had been broken by indifference. It didn't make me angry. It made me sad. Because when someone only sees your value in your absence, it means they never saw you to begin with. Melissa followed the next day. A single sentence. "I miss you. You were right." No argument. No excuse. No plan to fix it. Just an admission. I didn't reply. Because silence isn't always punishment. Sometimes it's protection. I wasn't going back to that house. To those rooms. To that long, slow death where every conversation required a witness, and every act of kindness was treated like a transaction. No, they had their chance to build something with me. They didn't take it. Now they were just staring at the foundation they refused to help pour. I drank my coffee alone that morning. Music playing softly in the corner. A breeze coming through the window. My phone buzzed on the counter. I let it. I had nothing to prove. I had paid every bill, kept every promise. And now I was keeping the one I made to myself. To leave the moment I realized my presence was valued less than my paycheck. They called it abandonment. I called it freedom. There's a kind of silence that isn't empty. It's full. Full of the things you finally stopped chasing. That's what I woke up to most mornings now. No slammed doors. No muffled arguments over who was using whose shampoo. No frost from Melissa in the kitchen because her daughters were mad about something I said. Or didn't say. Just the hum of the refrigerator, the clink of a mug on the counter, and the simple pleasure of choosing not to be in the way. I didn't realize how much noise I had absorbed until it stopped. Every sigh, every eye roll, every passive-aggressive were fine. When I asked what was wrong, my days used to revolve around walking carefully, around moods, around teenage cold wars, around a woman too tired to referee the family she built before I entered it. Now I walked where I pleased. I bought new shoes and wore them until they squeaked. Played music in the morning without checking who might still be asleep. Made dinner when I was hungry, not when 3 other schedules aligned. I started sketching again, something I hadn't done since my 20s. I bought a heavy sketchbook and drew for no one. Just lines, shadows, empty rooms, expressions I couldn't say out loud. For once, my life belonged to me. Not as an accessory to someone else's story. Not as a stand-in. Not as a solution. Just mine. But healing has an unwanted side effect, clarity. And the more I sat in my own silence, the more I saw how long I'd been screaming inside just to be acknowledged. I remembered every Christmas morning where I watched them unwrap gifts I paid for, only to say, "Thanks, Mom." Every school form I signed while their father posted filtered vacation photos from Mexico. Every time Haley said, "Can you just give me your card? I don't need the lecture." And every time Melissa looked away when they did. It was all there in sharp, high-definition memory. Not to haunt me, but to remind me why I stopped. I didn't cut them off to hurt them. I cut them off because continuing would have destroyed what little I had left of myself. 3 months after I left, I got another message. Morgan again. This time it was shorter. Not entitled. Not angry. Just, "I wish we had done things differently." No punctuation. No explanation. Just regret hanging in digital air. I didn't reply, because regret isn't the same as change. It's not a rebuild. It's a crack you notice too late. A week later, I heard from Melissa. She called this time. Not a text. Not an email. A full voice, piped into my quiet apartment, breaking the rhythm I had built. I let it ring 3 times before I picked up. Her voice was strained. I could hear traffic behind her. Like she was parked somewhere, engine running, trying to get the courage to say what she hadn't said when I was under her roof. "I know I didn't say much," she started. "I didn't respond. I let things go on longer than I should have. I didn't protect you from them. I didn't protect you from me." Silence. Then, "You were right to leave. But I miss you." I closed my eyes. Miss me? She never really had me. Not in the way it counted. I'd been the backbone of a structure no one thanked until it collapsed. When the power bills were paid, when the groceries were stocked, when the late-night rides were covered, I was just background noise. When I left, I became a headline. I took a breath and asked the one question that had lived in me longer than I admitted. "Why didn't you ever stand up for me?" There was a pause. Not long, but just enough to tell me the truth was uncomfortable. I didn't want to choose sides, but she had. Every time she let them ignore me, every time she asked me to let it slide, every time she excused their silence with, "They're just kids," or "It's complicated," she chose. And now she was standing in the wreckage of that choice, trying to rebuild with nostalgia. But I wasn't her contractor anymore. I didn't owe her repairs. "I'm sorry," she said. Another pause. "I really thought we were building something good." "We weren't building," I said. "I was holding the house up while you all leaned against it." I heard her breath catch. Then I hung up. Not out of cruelty, but because apologies without change are just echoes. And I'd heard enough echoes to last a lifetime. After that, the messages slowed. Morgan sent one more. I hope you're okay. Haley didn't message at all. I wasn't surprised. She had always been the one to measure love by blood, respect by loyalty to her absent father. To her, I was a placeholder, convenient, replaceable, disposable, and that's exactly what I became. I started dating again, slowly, carefully, but I told the truth now, all of it. I told women on the second or third date that I wasn't interested in raising someone else's children ever again. Not because I hated kids, not because I held a grudge, but because I knew what it meant to build on borrowed ground. One woman, Anna, asked me if I ever regretted leaving. I smiled. Not bitter, just honest. I regret not leaving sooner, because here's what no one tells you. When you leave a life that never saw you, you don't feel like a villain. You feel like a man who finally walked out of his own funeral. The mourning isn't yours, it's theirs. They cry because their support system vanished. Not because they miss you, but because they miss what you provided. Haley didn't mourn me. She mourned the convenience. Morgan didn't miss me. She missed tuition payments. Melissa didn't love me. She loved what I made easier. And now that the work was gone, now that the fixer had clocked out, they realized what I had been. A ghost, maybe, but a ghost who kept the lights on. So I kept writing. The blog grew. Men sent stories. Women sent questions. Everyone wanted to know the same thing. What do you do when the people you love treat you like a resource? My answer? You leave. Not because you hate them, but because you finally love yourself enough to stop bleeding for people who never learned how to bandage wounds. There were nights I still thought about them. About Melissa sitting alone at the kitchen table, wondering when her daughters would forgive her for letting the house go dark. About Morgan, halfway through her semester, asking herself if pride was worth a dropped scholarship. About Haley, staring at a receipt she couldn't pay, wondering why the world wasn't as easy as it used to be. They had their story, and I had mine, and mine no longer included them. They had called me selfish. They had called me dramatic. But now all they could call me was gone. And they were right. I was gone. Gone from their group chats, from their silent dinners, from their bank statements. Gone from the man-shaped hole they never tried to fill with respect. So when people ask me, would you go back if they apologized? I tell them this: apologies come easy when the ATM stops working. But respect, that's a currency they never learned to earn. And I'm done making change. Time doesn't heal. Not on its own. It just makes space. And in that space, you either build something better, or you sit in the wreckage. I built. Not out of spite. Not out of revenge. Just because there was nothing left in the old place worth saving. My name isn't on any family tree. There's no photograph of me in their hallway. No birthday memory that doesn't have someone else's name stitched into it. I was never a father in their eyes. Just a long-term solution to short-term problems. A dependable shadow. So I stepped out of it. And I've stayed out. It's been over a year since I left that house. The one I helped renovate, finance, and heat through every winter. They still live there, I think. Melissa probably had to reapply for every service I turned off. I can imagine the frustration in her voice when the utility company asked about proof of income. Can you list your employer? Can you provide payment history? Things she never had to do while I was footing the bill. It's strange how invisible work becomes visible only when it stops. Morgan graduated without my help. Or maybe she didn't. I never checked. She sent one final message in the spring. Just a photo of her in a cap and gown, standing alone. No father in sight. No stepfather either. I looked at it for a while. Not with pride. Not with resentment. Just stillness. Because there it was, the ending of something I had once helped build. And she stood in it alone because that's what she chose. She never asked me to come. And I never offered. Melissa hasn't reached out in months. I imagine she still tells people I walked out. That I was cold. That I didn't understand blended families. Or that I couldn't handle the pressure. Let her. Let them all. Because what I've learned in this distance is simple. Family isn't blood. It isn't time. It isn't what people say when the lights are on and the groceries are stocked. It's what they do when you stop giving. It's how they treat you when they no longer need you. They called me just a stepdad. But that title never protected me. It never gave me authority, only expectation. Show up, pay. Don't speak too loud. Don't discipline. Don't complain. Be the good man. Be the quiet man. Be the man who waits in the hallway while the real father gets all the credit for showing up twice a year. I used to think patience would win them over. That if I just kept showing up at soccer games, at birthdays, at graduation planning meetings, one day they'd say, "He matters. He's one of us." But no one says that to the man they use. Only when he's gone. Only when the account closes. Only when the tuition doesn't get paid. That's when they realize he was holding more than just the bills. He was holding the illusion together. And when he drops it, they scramble. But not because they miss him. Because they miss the ease. And that's the moment that breaks your heart. The moment you see your own love through their eyes and realize it was never love at all. Just labor. I live in a different part of Denver now. Farther out. A little colder. The mornings come slower here with light that takes its time. I walk every day. Same trail. Same bench near the water. There's a rhythm to it, something that feels earned. Some mornings I bring my coffee in a thermos. Some mornings I don't drink anything at all. Just sit and breathe. Not because I'm trying to meditate, but because there's nothing I need to brace against anymore. No footsteps pounding down the hallway. No sideways glances across the dinner table. No woman I love explaining my value to her children like I was a guest lecturer who overstayed his welcome. It's quiet now, and I've learned to stop filling that quiet with what-ifs. What if Melissa had stood up for me? What if Haley had said thank you just once? What if Morgan had asked me to stay? None of it matters, because it never happened. And if it was going to, it would have when it counted. Regret is easy when the consequences arrive. Gratitude, real gratitude, shows up when the work is being done. When someone looks you in the eye while you're fixing the sink or transferring another $1,000 to a tuition account and says, "I see you. Thank you. I never got that. And now I don't need it. Because what I gave wasn't wasted. It wasn't thrown away. It just wasn't appreciated by the people I gave it to. But I know what I did. I know I showed up. I know I stayed longer than I should have. And when the time came, I left without taking anything that wasn't mine. Not the house. Not the car. Not the apologies that came too late. I didn't demand closure. I gave it to myself. I told myself the truth. That being a good man in the wrong family is like watering a dead plant and waiting for spring. And eventually you stop blaming the soil. You just stop pouring. Sometimes I wonder if Haley will ever reach out. She was the most guarded. The one who stared through me like I was furniture she hadn't picked out. Maybe one day she'll see a man walking alone and remember how often I drove her places she never thanked me for. Or maybe she won't. Maybe her silence is permanent. That's fine. Because here's the last thing I learned. Being needed and being valued are not the same thing. They needed me, but they never valued me. And when I finally made them choose between respect and comfort, they chose neither. They waited too long. They assumed I'd stay. Because that's what stepfathers do, right? We endure. We pay. We fade into the walls and smile through the disrespect, hoping someday someone will realize what we meant. But I'm not a ghost. And I'm not a martyr. I'm a man with limits, with self-worth, with a spine that finally refused to bend. So if you're reading this and you're in that place, that quiet place where no one sees you until your absence becomes an inconvenience, hear me when I say this. Leave, not in anger, not in bitterness. Leave in clarity, because you're not an ATM. You're not a buffer between a mother and her unresolved guilt. You're not the invisible scaffolding of a house that only calls you father when it's convenient. You are a man, and you deserve to be treated like one. I chose self-respect, and it cost me a family, but they were never really mine. And if being loved means being used, I'd rather walk alone. So now I ask you, would you have stayed? Would you have kept paying? Kept showing up? Kept swallowing disrespect in the name of family? Or would you have walked out when the silence grew louder than the words? Because I walked, and they called it betrayal. But me, I called it freedom.